In this session, we're going to be looking at your outcomes. So we're going to be looking at what the options should be for your, or options are, I should say, for your outcome and what they entail. We're going to be looking at how your folder should be set out when you're ready for hand-in. And we're also going to be talking about referencing and what you need to reference, when you need to reference, and what it should look like in your folders and in your documents. So the outcome is an important part of your project. It's what you're actually going to be handing in, it's what you're creating as part of your project. Now there are 24 marks available for your outcome, and although that is the biggest number of marks for any of the assessment objectives, it's still only 30% of your overall mark. So although it is important, it's not the be all and end all of the project. In fact, there is only one bullet point on the mark scheme which looks at the final outcome. And I've put the band 4 one up on the video. So the excellent exploration of the theme topic results in a project with well-considered planned outcomes with fully met aims and objectives. So what that actually means is that you have met the aims and objectives you set yourself for your project, and that's what's going to be on your initial planning document. That you've fully explored your project, you've looked at a range of research, and that you have critically explored the project. So you're not just giving your opinion on whatever the topic of your project is. So it's the outcome is the accumulation of the planning, the research, the evaluation, the reflection that you are doing throughout your project. Now there are two forms that your outcome can take. The first is a dissertation, and this is the most popular outcome for a dissertation, for a project. And what a dissertation is a 5,000 word essay, so in its most basic form, but it is slightly different to a normal essay, in that it can be written in the first person if you want to. You can have subheadings, you can include graphs, graphics, tables, all of which don't count towards your word count, but everything should be appropriately referenced, and we'll talk about referencing later on in this video. But a dissertation is a midway between a report and an essay. Okay, so you have a little bit more latitude than you would in, say, an A-level essay with your dissertation. Now, they say around 5,000 words. They do give you leniency in about 10% either way. So you can be about 10% under, so about 4,500. You can be about 10% over, which is 5,500. What we're not wanting is 20,000 word dissertations or 10,000 word dissertations. Part of the project is sticking to set criteria, and the exam board set the criteria of roughly 5,000 words. So if you're in with that, within that 10%, then you are fine. We're not going to count every word that you've typed, but we're not looking for somebody to have written triple that or double that as part of their dissertation. So how is a dissertation structured? It is, as I said, it's structured slightly differently to an essay in the fact that you do have subheadings. So first of all, you're going to have an abstract. Now your abstract doesn't count towards your dissertation, but it's an opening paragraph that is separate to the rest of your dissertation, which sums up your project, explains why you've chosen the topic, and roughly what you found out. Think of it like the blurb on the back of a book. Okay, so it's kind of giving the reader an overview of what they're going to see in the remainder of the dissertation. Now the introduction, should be more of a detailed overview. So you're going to give a little bit of background information on your topic, the main points you're going to be making, and your answer or conclusion to your dissertation. Remember, this isn't a mystery novel. You're not trying to goad your reader into reading further. They have to. They're the examiner or your mentor. What you're wanting to do is state it clearly, this is my conclusion, and then go on and prove it. So it's not a mystery novel. State your conclusion, state your answer, prove it, and restate it in the conclusion. The main body of your dissertation, you can have as many sections or sub-chapters as you like, and there's no set structure given by the exam board as to how you should structure this. Now, it might be useful just to think of it in terms of PEEL, point, explain, evidence, link, or any other structure that you perhaps use in your A-levels or BTEC studies. But the main point is, if you use subheadings, the subheadings can help keep you focused. They can help to work with word count, so you know roughly how much you need to write for each section. But there's no limit on how many in terms of what's the minimum or the maximum. It's your dissertation, you determine how many sections you want in your main body. But you also do need to have a conclusion, and this is like the introduction. It's the restatement of your answer and conclusion, or conclusion, and why you've come to that answer and conclusion. You shouldn't include any new information in the conclusion, because that then creates a new point. Okay, so a dissertation is like an essay, but it also has some more leniencies than you would have in a normal essay. So an artifact is a physical representation of your project. Okay, it can be a book, a performance, a scrapbook, a model, a computer program, a piece of artwork. We've had dresses made. It's a physical piece of work. But the thing to remember about your artifact is that when you hand in your folder, you have to hand in your artifact as well, because if it is called for moderation, we have to send the artifact off to the exam board as well as your project folder. So if you make something that's massive, it's going to be problematic to send it off to the exam board. Okay, if you're doing something digital, then it needs to be on a disk, not on a USB drive. The reason for that is USB drives can become corrupted, DVDs or CDs less likely to do so. But with an artifact, you also need to do a 1,000-word report on your artifact. And this report is an outline of the process of making your artifact specifically. What did you do? Why did you choose this particular outcome or artifact for your project? What does it represent if it's not immediately obvious? Okay, and it's only 1,000 words. And again, you do get a 10% leeway either way on that. But it's kind of explaining your artifact. What does it mean? What's the process behind it? Why this particular artifact for your project? So the report, again, your structure is very similar to what we said for the dissertation. You're going to have an abstract which sums up why you did your project on this particular topic and why you chose that particular artifact. You're going to give background information on the topic in general, the intentions of your artifact, i.e. what were you trying to get across with it, and the proposed course of action to complete the artifact. You're also going to include in here some research that you've done. What did you find out about your topic? What conclusions did you reach? And how did this inform the development of your artifact? So just because you're doing an artifact doesn't mean you don't do any research, or you don't include that research in your folder in your project. You do, but it's just not as detailed as perhaps a dissertation is, and it's more about linking that to the artifact and how it becomes the artifact, okay, or how your artifact portrays or shows off the research that you have done. You also need to talk about your skill development. So what skills and techniques did you develop whilst creating your artifact? So here we might be talking, if you're doing a dress or some form of textiles, how you have developed those skills, or if it's artistic in some way. So we're talking here more about the actual skills of creating the artifact rather than the more general project-based skills. And the project development, which is the outline of the process of creating the project. What were the step-by-steps, if you like? Any changes in direction you took and why you did it. And then a review of the final piece compared to perhaps a more professional piece. What have you done well? What perhaps would need to be improved? What were the issues that you faced in creating the artifact? But remember, you only have about 10,000 words to do this, so we're not looking for huge amounts of research here. It's more a reflection on the artifact itself. Now, referencing. So I mentioned this earlier, that as part of your artifact you are going to need to reference in your dissertation or in your artifact report. So what is referencing? Well, referencing is citing sources in your text. And what that means is when you have quoted somebody or paraphrased a piece of somebody else's research or somebody else's views, you say where you got it from. You are showing that it is not your original work. Okay, so just putting quotation marks isn't quite enough at this level. You do need to reference where you got the quote from or where you got the information from, so that you are not going to be accused of plagiarism. At no point anywhere in your project should there be any copy and paste or any form of plagiarism. Projects are checked for plagiarism, and this could lead to your disqualification from the EPQ. So when do you reference? You reference when you summarize, paraphrase, or quote from another source. So that means it's not your original wording. Now, you don't have to paraphrase common vernacular or common phrasing, things like that. But if you are paraphrasing a book or you're paraphrasing somebody's written work or published work, then you do need to reference it. And for every reference that you put on your report or your dissertation, there needs to be a corresponding entry in your bibliography. So you can't reference something in your dissertation and then not include it in your bibliography or source analysis. There are two types of references you can use. You can use footnotes, where the reference is at the bottom of every page or the page in which the reference is on. Or you can use endnotes, where it's just a long list of references at the end of your document. Now, either are acceptable. It's completely your choice, and usually the decision is made on the aesthetics of it. Do you want the references at the bottom? Do you want them at the end? That's completely up to you. The reason you need references is to prevent accusations of plagiarism and to show where you've got your information from, and particularly so that we can differentiate between somebody else's ideas and your own, so that we can see the original thought processes that are coming from you. It's also easier to make it easier to read your dissertation, because if you try and reference in the actual essay, it becomes very, very tedious to read, because you're kind of reading along and then all of a sudden it's just like the reference is there. So using endnotes and footnotes makes it easier for the reader to read. But what we don't want is you being, or any accusations of plagiarism or any investigations into plagiarism, which could then lead to your disqualification from the EPQ. You can use quotes, you can use research from other people, but it has to be appropriately referenced. We need to see the difference between your original thoughts and those of other people. So how do you reference? So most of you are going to be writing up your reports or your dissertations on Microsoft Word, I assume so. This may be different on a Mac, but I only know Word, so that's what I'm going to go with. So when you want to reference, you need to select the text you want to reference. So highlight it as you would normally. Then in the top banner, you will find a section that says, or you will find a tab that says references. Now this might be as references as shown on the screen. You may have to go into the review menu to find that as well. Then you either click insert endnote or insert footnote, whichever one you're going to be using. Now the common one is insert footnote. That I don't know why they've gone for that as the default, but click on whichever one you want to use. Then it will give you a little number next to the bit that you highlighted, and then at the bottom of the page you'll see that number again. Now it's at the bottom of the page or at the end, depending on whether you're using footnotes or endnotes, where you put your reference. So if you're using endnotes, it won't be at the bottom of the page, it will be at the end of the document, but they will always stay there. Okay. So when you're referencing, use the same format as a bibliography. So going back to the Harvard referencing that we've talked about previously, you use that format for when you're doing your reference. There isn't a set number of references that you need to give, but as I said, anytime you quote, anytime you paraphrase, summarize, or take information from another person's published work, you need to reference it. Otherwise, you could be accused of plagiarism. Now, folders. This is the important thing. This is the thing that you are going to be handing in when you hand in your project. So it is really important that it is structured and clear, where we can find all of the information and everything we are looking for when we're marking it. If you just hand in a load of scraps of paper in no particular order in a folder, you're not going to get very good marks, because we won't search for work. If it's not there, it's not there, and you won't get the marks for it. And also remember that once you hand it in on the hand-in day, so on that first day after the Easter holidays, we can't give it back to you. We can't say, oh, you've missed out your presentation, you've not put it in your folder, can I have it? At that point, it is beyond any adaptation. What you hand in on that day is what gets marked. If it's not there, it doesn't get marked. Okay, there's no the next day going, oh, I've just found this, I forgot to put it in my folder, can I put it in my folder? The answer will be no. Okay, so the way that the folders need to be set out is quite clear. You need a 10-part subject divider. The first section will be your exam board administration. So in here, you're going to put your project progress form. You're going to put a copy of the mark scheme and any other documentation that comes from the exam board. Now, all the documentation that you need is available on Teams and has been shared with you. Then you're going to put your planning and your timelines. So this is going to be where you put your topic breakdowns and how you came up with your topic. It's going to be where you put all your timelines that you've created. And again, they don't have to be perfectly neat. They can be a little bit annotated and obviously not screwed up or anything like that, but they don't have to be perfect. We want to see adaptations and changes. We want to see your thought processes, and thought processes, let's face it, are not neat. Then we put the project journal, whatever format you've decided to take with that, and then we get your outcome, your dissertation or your artifact report. Now your artifact might fit in your folder, but it's highly unlikely, so you do need to, the report definitely needs to be in the folder, not necessarily the artifact itself. Then you're going to put your bibliography and your resource analysis that we talked about previously, your list of sources that you completed your research using, and your analysis of those researches. They're two separate documents, but they go in the same section of your folder. Your presentation I'll talk about in the next video, but that goes in next. Then your project evaluation, what you completed towards the end of your project. And then you've got appendices, and I've put 3 sections for appendices. So if you've done any primary research, that can go in there. So that could be a copy of your questionnaire, a couple of copies of the completed questionnaire, your data analysis from said questionnaire. In the next one, I've put secondary research. So here what we're looking for is some examples of annotated notes. So maybe a web page you've printed off and you've annotated, or a photocopy of a book that you've highlighted and annotated, but showing how you have used your research. You don't have to put everything in there. If you're using 3 different formats, say books, journals and websites, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 of each. Okay, sorry, 1 or 2 of each. And then appendices 3 I've put as drafts, but that's anything else that you want to include in your folder that you think would be helpful to show your process, to show how you've developed over the course of this project. Now, it is really important that your folder is completed and put together in this format. It makes it easier for your mentor to mark. It makes it easier for the examiner, should learn to speak, to find evidence to give you marks. Okay, so this is in your workbook as a reminder, along with the detailed information of what should be in each section.